I genuinely think Warmind cell mods or just Warmind cells, they might be one of the most underrated thing in all of Destiny. And I know that's a bold statement, but I mean, it's because they were introduced at a quiet time, and they weren't explained their mods. They're kind of complex to the especially to the casual player. I can understand how it might be a bit like, what's going on here? You got the Warmind, so you got certain weapons. It's a little bit confusing, but if you can just break through and just figure out how to, again, it's not too complicated. There's plenty of video guides, I'm sure, but Warmind cell mods are they're ridiculously powerful. They're just. Yeah. I'm actually really curious to see how this raid is going to go with what, because it's just they just almost break. I'm always kind of wondering, do Bungie know they're in the game? Like, do Bungie know how powerful Warmind? Like, because you can just drop one, shoot a couple enemies, get the Seraph SMG, shoot a couple enemies, drop one, stun the entire room, keep tapping it, stun the entire. Imagine, like, I mean, most of the problem when it comes to the day one raid is just the amount of ads. And you'd be able to just, I don't know, ad clear just seems like it'll be, I'm really curious to see how some of these mods, and especially Protective Light, it's tank mode. Some of the mods are so simple yet so powerful, and I really want to see like how much they're going to change that contest modifier, I think.
Like, this is what I really enjoy about the idea of all this, is that Bungie, they obviously know that Warmind cells are going to be used in the day one, and they have built them to be really powerful. But we've not seen what is inside that raid, and this raid is not only balanced for all the stuff that we currently have in the sandbox, like Warmind cells and like Charged with Light, but also it's balanced principally around stasis and the new subclasses, which are seriously powerful. So you combine all of that with the new exotics like Necrotic Grip. I don't know if you've seen that, but my god, that thing is
I need them.
Wow. It's stunning to see the amount of ad clear that you have, but I have a feeling that it's all in the game for a good reason. You know, they wouldn't give us all these strong options unless there was a reason to have them. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, yes, some of this ad clear looks ridiculous, but what does that mean they're going to throw at us in order to make use of it?
Yeah.
You know? And, you know, you got to remember too that raids tend to be kind of like the focal point of where PvE ends up going. And when Bungie wants to make the game harder, they will express it primarily through these endgame activities like raids and dungeons. Case in point, take a look at the transition from Eater of Worlds to Spire of Stars. Spire of Stars was the point at which Bungie said, okay, people are asking for the raids to be harder, let's make it harder. And there were endless waves of ads, and it was incredibly hard to do on day one. It was probably the most brutal raid.
I think it was the most,
Wish,
yeah, I'd say that.
And so when you take all of that into account, if Bungie is giving us all of these big tools, inevitably it's going to be so that we can respond to a truly vast number of threats. Either that or an incredibly large number of strong threats that aren't going to be so easily taken down just by Warmind cells.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they have to be,
Yeah. You also got to consider what raids do, right? Like, it's never just about the ad clear, which I almost wish it could be sometimes, considering the crazy builds that we've made, but yeah, there will inevitably be mechanics and stuff that we need to figure out and things that are going to wipe us, and we don't know what that stuff's going to be, but at the time being, we've just got to go ahead and check all this out and see what's happening.
Plus, there's also what we were just saying earlier, how this raid, we've got a week and a half between launch the DLC and launch the raid, and the only other time that happened was Last Wish, which, I mean, you'd think having a week and a half extra time would make it beneficial, but the only other time we've had a week and a half, Last Wish is possibly, again, besides Spire of Stars, Last Wish was debatably one of the hardest raids ever at launch. It was, even with a week and a half of prep, impossibly difficult. That's just trying to get that done even before reset was a mission. There was only a couple hundred people that even did it. But when it comes to this raid, again, you'd think, like, you know, we've got these Warmind cell mods, we got so many other mods as well, Protective Light, so many mods and so many like powerful abilities, and a whole week and a half. Maybe the difficulty is seriously hard, because I don't know, maybe I'm underestimating it, but maybe Bungie have, like you said, compensated, and it's just going to be impossibly difficult, because it kind of would need to be to trample all the, again, I want to see how a Warmind cell mod's not just going to tear through this whole raid. That's what I want to know.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's going to principally be with how they introduce enemies that are immune to some of those effects, right?
Yeah, probably.
Like, the number one things that I fear for this raid are going to be the bosses they throw at us, and any enemies that count technically as boss type enemies and as vehicles, right?
Yeah.
Because all of that stuff is immune to any stun in the game, regardless of whether it's blinding grenades, cellular suppression, stasis freeze. Like, doesn't matter what it is, they're all going to be able to commit to their main mechanics. And that's all a very big part of how you control some of the larger stuff, you know? Stasis is really powerful, not just because it destroys all these lower tier ads with all the shatter damage, but you can lock down those really powerful, big endgame bosses for a bit. And there are some that are just so large they can ignore it. And that's where the problem's going to arise. That's where it's going to be really troubling to deal with these ads. So yeah, like that's what I fear. That's the thing I'm going to be looking out for, alongside obviously the mechanics.